Moving on, viewers, I'm sure everybody would love to know what should be the focus areas for CIOs in reclaiming growth. Our upcoming panel on the CIO mandate, Innovate or Perish, discusses exactly this. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Yashwendra Singh, Executive Editor of ETCIO and the moderator for this very relevant session on the CIO mandate, Innovate or Perish. As we all know, COVID-19 has altered several fundamental rules of business and technology. To bounce back and reclaim growth in the post-COVID-19 era, enterprise technology leaders will have to focus big time on innovation. There are no two ways about it. We know CIOs have been for years talking about innovation, doing more with less, cutting costs, etc. We also know that they've always aspired for the seat at the big table. With regards to the former, they have to walk the talk now, more than ever. As for achieving the latter, I believe there isn't any better opportunity than now. In this session, top enterprise technology leaders will throw more light on how they are fueling innovations in their respective enterprises to reclaim growth. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Juliana Chua, Digital Transformation Director, Essilor, Mr. Bala Subramanian Ganesh, Chairman, HSBC Technology, Mr. Dilip Kumar Khandelwal, MD and Global Head, Technology Centers, Deutsche Bank, Mr. Gopi Thangavel, VPIT, RIL, Mr. Saiful Bakhtiar Osman, CIO, Malaysian Aviation Commission, and last but not the least, Mr. Dhananjay Ganju, Managing Director, India in SARC for F5 Networks. Welcome, panelists. Okay, great. So I'll set the ball rolling with Ms. Juliana because, ladies first. So Juliana, Essilor is the world's largest manufacturer of ophthalmic lenses. I'm sure your business would have also got impacted because of the pandemic. As a technology leader, how are you supporting business leaders to design new business models? What technologies do you see will play a critical role as you emerge out of this crisis?
I think technology has increasingly become very important, and really the organizational success really depends whether the CIO can move from very functional to being a very strategic business leader. So for a tech transformation to be go to market, we actually look into a very holistic approach to deliver the full business value. So creating powerful customer experiences. For example, when we want to do that, we actually need a whole new look on how a data architecture could actually track and make sense of the customer behavior. So architecting also modular platforms needs revamped approaches to hiring of the new people that could actually help us in transiting this move as well. So I will really say the support we actually provide to a business leader to design new business model really on 3 key focus areas that we try to reinvent technology delivery by embracing agile. We also try to improve the next generation capabilities, such as end-to-end automation, platform as a service, and also like cloud, developing flexible technical partnerships that could actually reinvent how we can actually bring technology into the market as well.
Sure, Ms. Juliana. Seems like you already have the plan in place. Moving on to you, Mr. Bakhtiar. How are you building for the future? Aviation industry is one of the hardest hit because of the pandemic. How are you building for the future? How are you trying to reclaim growth? What technologies do you think would play a critical role in pulling back, bouncing back?
Okay, for Malaysia industry itself, and I believe it's also worldwide, aviation industry is really impacted by this COVID pandemic. So, like ourselves as the economic regulator for the aviation industries, we are a self-funded organization, commission. So our income will generated by the regulator administrative charge, which is we impose to all outgoing passengers. So the income will come mostly from the volume of passengers. With the travel bans, with the travel restrictions, so it does impact us as a regulator as well as all the airline players, industry players. So for us, fortunately, we already embarked in the cloud platform since the inception of MEFCOM in 2016. So basically, in terms operationally, we are not impacted during the COVID pandemic. because once the Prime Minister announced that we are going, everything is going to work from home because of they imposed the MCO, Movement Control Order, then we are already in good position because our core system, our consumer complaints management system, our Aerofile landing permit is already on cloud. So it is available as long as there's internet connection, then we are good. Even for complaints, people can still file complaints through the mobile apps, through our customer hotline, which is already on private PABX cloud. So they can call our 1-800 numbers, and our operators can assist them whenever if they have, as long as they have the internet connections. That's all. So moving forward from here, so what I'm looking at is that we are really need of data analytics, and also we are moving towards building a data warehouse, or at least a mini data mart, because the information for aviation industry is everywhere. So as for us, MEFCON, the academic regulator, we aspire to become the center of excellence for aviation industries. So everything that you should know about aviation industry in Indonesia, we are the source, the single source of truth. So that is where we are going moving forward.
Sure, Mr. Saiful. So you're already maximizing cloud. That's really nice because lots of enterprises are now looking at cloud, and also, clear roadmap. You want to go for analytics. Great. So moving on to the two gentlemen from the banking industry now. Mr. Ganesh, your thoughts on this? How are you pulling back growth? How are you bouncing back from the crisis? And which technologies are you leveraging for it?
Thank you very much for inviting me on the panel. I think what we're really seeing is some things are the same, some things are quite different. In the sense that our fundamental focus is to actually make it easy to bank with from a customer point of view. So the customer experience is the key. That's the core. We're obviously also looking at our own employee experience, actually how to operate in this new world. If you do both correctly, then you actually improve the returns to the investors and meet all the requirements of all the other stakeholders. What we are definitely seeing is a fundamental change in the adoption of digital experiences by customers. Almost an exponential change in that. Even in the pandemic, everybody is kind of at home, and so adoption of digital experiences is really the key. Now, when you talk about digital, you're talking about end-to-end customer journeys, from the mobile device from your hand to heritage systems at the back, and you have to connect them all up in a seamless form. So we invested a lot in DevOps, in Agile over the last few years. We are able to deliver change significantly faster than before. And some of the gentlemen have already kind of spoken about other aspects that are enablers, such as cloud. We have got significant partnerships with the major cloud providers, such as Google and Amazon, AWS. We're also investing a lot in machine learning and blockchain and those kind of technologies, because they are necessary for supporting our kind of customer needs, etc. So whether a retail customer or a small business customer or a corporate customer, we are seeing a significant adoption of digitization and automation, and hence enabling technologies that go with. I think the key for us is to be able to connect, and banks by their very nature have got a significant heritage. So the key is to be able to connect our heritage to our modern technologies, and we are doing that very, very successfully.
Sure, Mr. Ganesh. So coming to you, Mr. Khandelwal, we've heard technology leaders talk about cloud, analytics, AI, ML, blockchain. Your thoughts here, sir? How are you supporting business leaders to design new business models by leveraging technology?
Well, thanks for having me here. I think there are two aspects that we need to consider here. One aspect is, I think we've traditionally seen the IT in a large organization supporting the business to be traditionally a service versus vendor versus service relations. And I think what COVID has given this is a completely new meaning, which is basically the technology will enable a lot of stuff in terms of technology to become a partner with the business together. I think that's the first key aspect which is happening. And in that angle, I think the whole transformation stuff completely changes. And I think Deutsche Bank, in that sense, announced a large transformation a year back. And it was predominantly focused on 4 aspects. One aspect was around data. I mean, if you look at bank, they generate a lot of data. I think the consistency of the data is key and critical important. So it is important to get the consistency of the data and getting the data in the right place. That's point number 1. The point number 2 is once you have the data in place, how do you move your legacy applications back into the cloud world? And I think we just tied up with GCP as a large-scale partnership for multi-year, so that we can transform a lot of our applications into the cloud world. And the third aspect is once you have the data there and the application sitting on the cloud, then you can generate a lot of critical analytics reports and all those things on top of it, which is much more easy. And you go into a direction which is API or microservices based, start building the applications one, and that can be leveraged in a particular way in other way. So I think there are 3 aspects which are key. It's very, very highly operational focus. So you always need to have an element of how do you remove the unwanted stuff, and that's where you leverage and find out a lot of the applications which are used multiple places. You don't need to duplicate the stuff. How you can automate the stuff, that's you start leveraging a lot of AI and machine learning capabilities, including when you build applications. And some of these cases you can do it on your own. Some of the cases you have to leverage the platform which is provided by GCP. And in some cases you need to partner with a lot of other vendors or even the young startups who are there who you can collaborate and work together to make it happen. So I think it's a multifold stuff. It's about data, it's about moving to the cloud, having a service architecture, and moving in the right direction.
No, definitely. You've highlighted the importance of data, and no wonder it's being called as the new capital in enterprises today.
Yeah.
Great. Moving on to Mr. Gopi now. Sir, your thoughts on this?
Yeah. See, actually, it's a slightly different point, I believe, because the reason is we always go through some kind of situations always. You know, if you look at the situations of like a COVID right now we are talking about, other one is any political situations also, it will change the dynamic of the way we work. The change will happen, you know, example is the GST or any other government regulatory, suddenly the things will change. Second is any new CIO or CEO or any other, the top level leadership change happen in any organizations. That also completely the transformation happens, right? So when you look at it, it is a multi-angle to it. So it is not like only the COVID bring us something is new. It is not like that. Even in 2007-8, we all know the each situations how we do that. Even there is a famous memes also move around everywhere. Like, okay, who is the real digital transformation initiator? Is a CIO, CEO, CTO, or COVID-19? So everybody say it's a COVID-19, right? So similarly, whenever we look at such a things, we always have the things, you know, it is nothing is, you know, something, the dynamics may change 20%, but 80% risk and the things happening since very long, even Y2K issues or whatever it is. So when I look at it, more than the technology transformations, it's about how we look at our asset. That is what I can see it. Because if you look at the asset, either it is the end user computing piece or is a data center piece, or it's how we are utilizing or enhancing your asset. Is it a SaaS-based way you are utilizing your asset or services? You know, that is what we are looking at it. And that's how it's benefiting us, to be honest. You know, when we are such a situations, when it's raised, and when we are transferring around, you know, lakhs and lakhs of people into work from home, and this is really benefited us because you cannot do anything in overnight. Like you cannot build Arc in overnight. It is impossible. So it's a slow transformations, but at the same time, yes, how we are acting on that particular situations, you know, calmly, and whoever high BP or very intense or high, you know, hyper people, we have to eliminate from that situations, and then things will automatically happen. We just need to tell the team, the sky not going to fall down, so just calm down and get the things done. It's automatically happen in seamless way, and that's how we got the things done, to be honest.
Sure, sure. No, definitely, sir. Like you said, adapting to the crisis is really critical, and you've done that wonderfully. So great. Coming back to you, Ms. Juliana, you know, a majority of the CIOs I have spoken to, they've acknowledged the fact that, you know, their budgets would get curtailed going forward. So, you know, that's going to be a certainty. Most of them have acknowledged this. But there is also an irony here. CIOs will still have to accelerate investments that create competitive differentiators for their companies, although their budgets may have curtailed. So what will be your investment strategy going forward in such a scenario where, budgets curtailed on one hand, yet you need to fuel digital transformation on the other?
In terms of this cost savings and also like the budgeting, what is more important is really to look at the essentials. What are the key movers that we actually need to move in this kind of a pandemic period as well? So the second thing that I will also advise is really to look at this cycle in the shorter range of time, right? But now in view of this pandemic, we have put in place like every 4 weeks that we look at what are the things that are really essential for us to spend. And I think really to adopt agile so that we actually launch in terms of what we call a MVP, a minimum viable product. So we launch to the market in smaller pieces, and then we watch out for the market reaction to it. We actually monitor also the data analytics behind it to see what is really moving for the market. SLR is a company that actually operates in many countries. And I think in every country, the movers for the local community is really different. They react differently to the different digital initiative. And really, once you understand the data analytics, once you understand how small of a piece can you really move, that we reinvest on what really work for the audience as well. So really budget on the essentials and then adopt agile to do the launches in a smaller footfall so that we don't actually wait for one big change to happen before we launch anything to the market, because that might not give you the first mover advantage that you need in this kind of pandemic period as well.
So you're doing a financial review every month, which used to earlier happen probably every quarter, right?
Yes. So we are looking into what are the things that are really interesting to the market. How is the consumer really reacting to all these changes that we put in place? And then really with that, we decide again, what should we reinvest on? And should we move more of the budget to this segment or to the other segment?
Sure. Great. I'll move to Mr. Dhananjay now. Mr. Dhananjay, tell me, what are your thoughts here? What do you think? How can CIOs, what should be their strategy going forward when it comes to investments?
Hey Yash, thanks for having me here and welcome to all the CIOs on the panel. The core business of all the CIOs that I see here is not IT. The core business is the business they are in. And several of them have outsourced, their core IT functions to people who are experts at those core IT functions. So that's point number one. Cost is second point. The outsourced IT function is, able to do that in a very cost-effective fashion. They have the skill sets and they keep upgrading those skill sets. From that point of view, outsourcing plays a very big role in almost every CIO's agenda. The second point is technology today, to point of what Dilip said and what Gopi also said. Dilip mentioned how legacy applications are now transformed into more containerized applications, and cloud is of great use. Likewise, Mr. Gopi also commented on the same. You are no longer, or the CIO or the companies are no longer stuck to the hardware that they used to buy and build large data centers of their own. Most of the applications are now containerized and microservices oriented and cloudified. So lift and shift and mass is happening, and applications are moving to the cloud, and so should the infrastructure. So F5 took that journey almost 4 years ago when we converted almost all our appliances into a piece of software. So it can sit on a hypercompute environment and offer you the same services across multi-cloud architecture. Besides, gone are the days when you had to consume in a perpetual manner. That's the point Gopi also raised. You can now consume technology in as a service or a subscription, perpetual if you want to, or even ELAs. So companies like F5 are willing to show value to their clients if you consume us in an enterprise license agreement fashion, because almost everything that we produce today is a piece of software.
Great, Dhananjay. I'll come to Mr. Gopi now. Sir, I don't know whether this question is right for you or not, because your company is flush with funds. How do you look at this? Would there be a cut in your budgets? How will your investment strategy be different going forward?
Either you have a heavy fund or lavish fund or whatever the fund, still the conscious call on each steps is taken always. Even when you have a huge fund, it doesn't mean we spend everywhere. Even there is a global crisis, still, God forbid, everything is going on smooth. But still, the actions are remain the same. But at the same time, what I see in it, even the non-crisis or crisis time, when people ask for budget, as long as it's justifiable, there is a return and there is making sense. There is a certain period. Before we used to say that, the server means 7 years, or some services you need a 5-year kind of thing. And now the 5-year, 7-year become extremely long-term plan. Even you look at the employees also, before you can always hear that 25-year, 20-year kind of experience. Now, as per the Gardner and Forrester report itself saying only 19 months is the ideal state for any employee. The first 1 year he's supposed to contribute everything, and second 9 months he's supposed to learn and sustain and increase the productivity. And after that, the guy is supposed to move on. That's the right approach. That's what Forrester and Gardner recommended. The guy is stuck more. You are not going to get anything more than that, unless he's a different Zen kind of guy. So the same thing is applicable, the funding and everything, as long as we are able to justify and make returns and fail also. Even we invest sometime wrong way, but fail fast. If it is a short-term fail, it is always appreciable. Even we fail also, it's fun. But at the same time, how we are justifying with a proper RTO or CO, whatever it is, it's a return of investments or any other terms, and 1 rupee, how is it become 100 crore or whatever it is. So the justification is there. I don't think there is a stop thing. Even there is no justification for 2,000 rupees also, it will get stopped. That's how it works.
Sure, sir. So Mr. Ganesh, the CEO is now increasingly looking up to the CIO to cut costs across various functions within the enterprise. And it's also crucial because, you need to identify and realize cost savings in the short term to the medium term and reduce discretionary spend to generate liquidity that is required for business funding and recovery. How do you intend to achieve these? Cutting costs across various functions within the enterprise. What's the plan for that?
Cutting costs is a kind of a byproduct. It's an outcome. Firstly, I think we go back to the reason we are here is because of customers, and the focus is to grow the customer base. The focus is to actually improve customer experience. How do you do that? How do you do that? By adopting more digital approaches, more automation, more streamlining processes, less humans to do the work that we do historically. Efficiency will come if you actually focus on customer journeys, if you actually focus on automation, if you obviously focus on streamlining the processes. We are very focused on also creating an entrepreneurial mindset, which is actually to increase the innovation quotient in the company. So people actually are able to create solutions without it being the preserve of a few at the top of bank. So I think in summary, I think the focus on digitization, the focus on automation, the focus on streamlining processes, creating a simpler, leaner organization, creating an entrepreneurial mindset. These things will lead to, in effect, a better customer experience, and in doing so, release some cost from the business that can be invested for other purposes.
Sure, Mr. Ganesh. Mr. Bakhtiar, your take on this? I won't say cutting costs. I would rather say rationalize costs across different strategic business units within the organization. What's the plan for that?
Okay, for us, the immediate one is to reassess all our projects, because we have a few projects in the pipeline. Some we already awarded, but due to this pandemic period, we really need to reassess everything once more, and then we prioritize which one comes first and which one comes second. Because in times like this, we really need to prudently spend, because we don't want to burden the business with the unnecessary expenses. So in my case, I have to postpone a few projects to next year maybe, and realign for the project to become a 2 years period, maybe for 2021 to 2022. So the overall cost will spread across 2 years. This will be much better, because we don't want to lose the momentum, because it's not easy to get the buy-in from all the stakeholders to go ahead with the projects. Well, so what we did is that, to make sure the momentum is still going, is that we start small. Then for the next phase, we bring it to 2 years spread across 2 years. So that is not totally frozen, totally ignored, but you will still have a little bit progress throughout the years. Then another thing in terms of maintenance, we make sure that whatever that we can renegotiate, then we renegotiate. Because sometimes even a small cash is important to the organization. So whenever an annual expenditure, if we can break across maybe monthly or quarterly payment, and yes, we do that so that we have some additional cash for the organization. At least this is what we are doing at MEFCOM currently. Yes.
Sure, sure. Mr. Khandelwal, what's your strategy here? Have you identified certain areas, certain functions where you would optimize cost?
Yeah, so I think I will reiterate again to what I touched upon. I think our journey is more towards cloud. And when you move towards the cloud, you want to simplify the existing landscape or remove the things which you don't require or decommission the stuff which you don't require, which is always a large case or a large problem in large enterprises. So I think it is always the strategy, but I think a situation like this kind of fast-paced the stuff of looking at those stuff and what can be first simplified, look at the processes where you can really get a benefit out of it, and then ultimately move towards the cloud world. Now, as you move towards the cloud world, it's also important that how you are building those applications on and how fast are you able to build these applications. So you, of course, will look at a lot of the applications you want to build in, but then in situation like this, what changes is what are the things that you want to prioritize. And once you prioritize those topics which are critical and important, then that decision is typically done in partnership with business to what they see can generate a lot of revenues for them. So once you identify those applications, you just need to execute very, very fast. So it's all about simplifications, which always helps you in the journey of cloud. And once you're building this along with the partnership with the business, you identify those topics, but then you need to get it executed fast. And once for execution fast, of course, you always will follow the approach like design thinking, your agile methodology, delivering at a fast pace, delivering the value which you can generate on a weekly basis rather than waiting for 18-month cycle and all those angles. So I feel sometimes it's a very, very good opportunity to push this agenda also faster. It has not been that bad for technology, this situation, because it just strengthened the role of a technology in an organization, which was there already, but I think it just makes sure that this becomes an agenda at the highest level. And I think that's what COVID has shown. And I think we always feel our agenda remained the same. It just speeded up some of the aspects which we were doing in a phased manner.
Sure. A great approach there. Mr. Gopi, sir, data has traditionally been locked in large systems within an enterprise, but the situation is completely different today. We have a distributed enterprise structure where employees are working from home across geographies. In this scenario, data will have to be made available to everyone in this distributed setup. What's your new approach? What's your strategy with respect to data to make it more democratized in such a scenario?
Excellent one. See, now the new situation is the strategy always needs to be updated. Otherwise, we will go into big task actually. A simple example is the US done one quick survey actually regarding US is the highest consumer, like 29 to 33 billion dollar they used to consume only the chewing gums. That's one of the highest in the world. They bring down to 2-3 billions and nobody knows why, and they put a special team to understand what is happening because it's the highest consumer, we cannot lose it. So if you go to any shopping mall, you will find that traditionally all the chewing gum in the nearest paying counter and other area, point of sales. But what happened, before people waiting in the queue, they used to pick the chewing gums. And after that, what happened now, nobody buying it because the only reason is everybody looking at the mobile. So your mobile business, if you go and tell anyone, your mobile can change your business, nobody going to believe it. So it's the same thing. Anything, we never know what can impact your strategy. So it is important to understand and keep changing it. If they cannot just continue the same strategy, they will lose it in a big time. So even look at our data also. If you look at the cost versus what it is, if I go with the only business requirement, of course, I have to put everything in a SaaS services, like a bring your own devices or zero trust model. That is the best approach. But at the same time, when I look at the only cost angle, of course, it will not make much sense, because the reason is it's very expensive, and at the same time, it's a recurring cost. Due to pandemic, now everybody is jumping, and the cloud service provider growth rate is 478%, if I'm not wrong, within the first week of August. That's what they say. Because everybody is jumping, because we cannot send engineer to fix something in the data center due to hundreds of restrictions. You need to go to quarantine, and hardware logistics become a challenge, all the challenges going on. So when I started to give services, so this is the main reason. And there is another reason also, how to ensure that, all the data has been, available. So even I am urging my other colleagues and friends also, I used to tell the same thing. Let's ensure that try to convert all your legacy or whatever it is into SaaS-based model. That is the only way. Either you put microservices, or you put Kubernetes, or you put whatever the technology you like it, or you with own your open source platform, whatever it is. So SaaS is the only solutions, and anyway, that is the only way out, and that's what we are doing.
Sure, great. Ms. Juliana, do you echo Mr. Gopi's sentiments here? SaaS is the way forward to democratize data in this distributed enterprise setup?
Definitely, I think using a SaaS model and going on cloud is one of the way that we can actually prevent data silos as well. So actually, with a cloud storage, it's a very centralized location to store the data, and we can actually leverage on the database security, management security, to actually have features that encrypt or mask the data to heighten the security, so that the data can be democratized and actually be shared across the different employees as well.
Dhananjay, let me come to you now. Would you like to throw more light on how this can be done, given the fact that cybersecurity becomes really important in such a scenario?
Correct. So, I've heard all the eminent speakers talk about how data is important, data is the new oil. And if I were to kind of take you back a couple of years, the way companies at that time, defined their heavyweightness was, how many machineries do I have, or, how many buildings do I own? And we call that era as the era of machine era, right? It was the machine capital that defined how big you were. Then came the era of human capital. So how rich you were defined as how the kind of intelligent people that you hired, and that was called as a human capital era. In today's era, while on one side we have data, the other side is application. So we are currently going through the era of what we call as application capital, and it becomes extremely important, as all of you have talked about, moving from legacy applications to more containerized applications and moving to cloud. Inherently, at the back of our mind, we think that they are secure on the cloud. Well, the cloud provider provides you protection from the platform. The onus of security of the application still remains our very own. So, whether it's protection against fraud, protection against bot, protection against web application firewall, or DDoS, denial of service attacks, this is something which is very prevalent and has seen a massive shoot up. So we have done analysis across industry types. And when we present these graphs in terms of just showing the kind of traffic types and traffic patterns are appearing for the clients are fairly surprised. When you see the diurnal rhythm of human beings, that's the human traffic at the bottom. But the attack traffic is right at the top, which is all the bots that are hitting your network. And our job is to make sure that we segregate and clear the fiction, which is machine traffic and automation traffic and bots traffic, out of the way, and let the human traffic flow first before we decide what is a good human and what is a bad human, to prevent fraud. So our take on application capital is you should be aware where the applications are, you should be able to manage them, and you should be able to see their performance, and of course provide heavy security around them.
Sure, Dhananjay. Dhananjay, you also have a very differentiated and unique approach called, code to customer.
Yes.
So can you tell us more about that?
Oh yeah, it's a philosophy rather than anything else. So F5 is an application company. At the end of the day, we accelerate and protect application. So our philosophy has to revolve around a code or an application, right? That's what we call code to customer. At the end of the day, you're building applications or you have applications, and this application is servicing and is an end user. Like Mr. Balasubramaniam commented, their key aspect is to provide a great digital experience to the end user here. So if I were to define this as an example, saying, here is the end user, he's an e-commerce end user, access an e-commerce website. So it does not matter how great application that has been written. You would have written the best applications using the best of agile methodology and converted your legacy application to a more containerized application. The fact of the matter is, the application to be delivered to this end user has to traverse a certain path. And today that path is filled with all sorts of technologies. We call it the tool sprawl. And if I were to briefly describe this tool sprawl, it is you go from a router, switch, and you go to a load balancer, then you go to a little bit of application load balancing, then you go to a bit of security, then from security go to CDN, and I'm oversimplifying it. And after CDN, you kind of deliver that experience to the end user on a mobile device. This tool sprawl, the challenge for CIOs today is this is 13 different technologies. How do you take these 13 technologies and combine them into a smaller, more manageable group is what F5 has to offer, which is saying we convert these 13 distinct, different, complex technologies into just 3, and we deliver an experience that is expected out of a great application to the end user. So that's what we call as delivering the code to the customer.
Great strategy there, Dhananjay. Mr. Ganesh, what learnings have you picked up from the present situation that will help you prepare for the future differently? How different will be your strategy going forward into the future so as to reclaim growth?
Thank you for that. Can I just comment on the previous question, if I may, on the democratization of data, and then I'll lead on to this thing. I think in a financial institution, given 150 plus years of history, we have a lot of heritage. We don't use the term legacy. Legacy is banned in the organization. Be proud of our heritage. So we have to make sure that to actually provide great digital experiences, we have to democratize data, because data is resident in a number of our heritage systems. So this SaaS and cloud and all of these are absolutely part of the answer. Actually, for us, the big driver and the big thing what we have done over the last few years is an API and microservices strategy. Effectively, you have to open up all of these systems so anything can connect to it. And in a banking context, with open banking movement taking place now across many countries in the world, we not only have democratized the data within the organization, but outside the organization. So customers can actually see their relationship, not just with one institution, but with many institutions. Now, what we actually found is, which actually leads to the learning question is, actually technology was kind of the least of the challenge. The biggest challenge actually, or the biggest opportunity is to retool and retrain our people. So unlearn and learning philosophy. You have to unlearn a whole bunch of things that are not relevant for the last, that are relevant in the last 20 years, not relevant anymore going forward. So we have to take people who are 20 years, 25 years plus in the industry, who actually have gone through all the traversed out through the programming languages, whether they started with COBOL and Visual Basic to Visual C++ to the modern day Java and so on and so forth. We have to retrain them. We have to re-equip them in a different way. So that we have done quite significantly. So today we have the most confident people, who have been here 20 plus years or more, who actually can do these things, to actually be able to provide great services. The other thing in this COVID situation is we just call it one thing, the trust quotient is increased significantly compared to what happened in the physical world, because nobody in the office anymore. So you can't really measure the same things that you used to measure before. You have to trust people to do what they're supposed to do when they are actually at home or wherever they are. So we are focusing very much on outcomes rather than inputs. It is less relevant how many hours you have worked. It is less relevant whether you respond to my email in the last, what is important is what did you actually deliver. If you're a programmer, did you write a great quality code? If you're a project manager, did you actually deliver the milestones you're supposed to do? So on and so forth. The trust quotient is a really big factor now, and that is, there was a lot of skepticism about whether productivity will actually increase in this way of working. We actually found it is significantly, simply because we're now trusting people and giving them the wherewithal to manage the work and their personal life in a very, very different manner in the virtual way we're actually operating. So I think that's the one thing I will call out. The human trust quotient has significantly increased, and that is something to kind of keep hold of and build on.
Sure. Ms. Juliana, What have been your biggest learnings from this pandemic? And how are you going to apply those learnings to business for reclaiming growth?
So I think during this pandemic, I think we certainly see that there are certain sectors that will actually be very much affected, but there are also others that will actually survive and thrive, right? So companies who are much more digital and much more faster and agile to embrace this change will actually survive and thrive. So in the post-COVID environment, I think new risks and these waves of innovation will definitely emerge. I think there are already a new business model that we're seeing that are unheard of or unseen of before. So the market will definitely reward businesses that can actually deploy their products and services with agility. I think business leaders, as us business leaders, we will really need to use this fresh strategic framing to create the organizational structure that promote such kind of agility to test and learn, and also to one of the speakers who mentioned earlier before, to actually fail fast, so that we actually learn from what we have actually deployed and see what is not working. So really to also take a leap of faith by reimagining the future. There are a lot of legacy issues that every organization face. And I think we have to take a leap of faith to see how can we really change, and also how do we actually execute this change management. We plan our strategies and also adopt this very entrepreneurial mindset organization for recovery. So I think these are the quick learnings that I've seen work well in the organization in the past couple of weeks, and how it helped us to really emerge as a stronger player as well.
Sure. So being agile, failing fast. Mr. Bakhtiar, these were the learnings for Ms. Juliana. What about you? What have you learned from the pandemic?
Yes, I agree with what Ms. Juliana said, because from my point of view is that we must always think ahead, because this pandemic really taught us a painful lesson for those who are not prepared. You can see that most companies are struggling because of the something that happened so sudden. Then when people need to work from home, then I have colleagues that once they announce that we need to the MCO, then people need to work from home. They're already they line up to only starting purchase laptops for their staff. So it's something that we need to strategize. We need to have a good risk assessment, risk management in place, so that we can anticipate to have what comes next. So how to foolproof our business processes, how to prove our business, so that whatever happens, we have always have a plan B. Then to make sure that everything is in order, every organization should know what is important to them, because there's no such thing, there's one size fits all. So everybody must know what is important to them. So in terms of data, what is important to me is not necessarily important to you. So you really need to understand your organization and come up with a solution that is really fits your organization. Because in that way, you will not overspend, and you have the right fit technology and also backup procedure for your organization. Yes.
So having a strong focus on BCP and having a plan B in place. Great. Mr. Gopi.
Yes.
See, our view is very simple, straightforward. We cannot do ODAC anymore going forward also. So it is important to, prepare for the next crisis or next phase of the current crisis, whatever we want to call it. So it is important to move on that, and this is the right time to get budget, if you ask me, because it may sound weird, but that is a fact. We can use this opportunity. For example, one security attack happened, we use that opportunity to get all the security budget. So this is the right time to get budget approval from all the leadership team and wherever the CFOs are there. So it is important to understand that and prepare for the worst come. We cannot say that, okay, we done it, we deliver, everybody working from home and remote work stuff is working fine. We are doing many things. No, it's just a beginning, to be honest. So we have to be very well clear about these things, and we have to be ready for the next crisis or extensive of what is going to happen. So when we think about it, we know very clearly, even you look at our process and everything, even if you look at our hard disk, look at our laptop, we keep 90% of the data. We never going to look for next 1 year or last more than 2-3 years. We never look at the data, but we keeping it. Similarly, organization, they do all the digital transformations, but they keep all the legacy also. If you look at, I know most of the company who are having a 30-35 year data also, even today. It's not about the crime. It's about how we can archive it and move it fast, actually, with the minimum. It is like when you go to hotel, we are not going to alter the bed, the decorations and all. Think like that, and we have to move on in a simple package way. We have to remove as much hurdle possible and put it in a simple mechanism and think about the worst always. That's what IT do. We always think about any BCP plan or DR or any change plan or anything. We think about the worst and we create the scenario and we'll implement it, right? So let's think about the worst. That is the best way, and we can go ahead on that. And one particular service cannot going to be sufficient. Even you look at the banking across the globe. Now banking started to enable the consulting the doctors, consult with the hospitals, and even Zomato, they are giving like you want to buy vegetables also, you can order from there, or meat or whatever it is. So anything, they are going with a multi-purpose way. That is what it is happening now. And growth is also happening in that multi-dimension way. And it's going to be permanent? No. It is going to, again, the dynamism going to change. So we have to be open-minded for it. That is the only thing is required, I believe.
Great. Mr. Khandelwal, what lessons have you learned from this pandemic, sir?
I think for us, always there have been two philosophies. One is how do you serve your customer, and how do you work and serve your, I always say, employees. These are two aspects of it. And so when you move into the COVID situations, you need to find a different way of serving your customers and a different way of working with clients, or different way of serving, or different way of working with all your employees, which in a certain way teaches you that you need to be more adaptable in a way which was not possible in the past. So example, we come from the banking world, right? I mean, so you always felt that the traders and the salespeople, you cannot work out of home because there is a 4I principles and all those angles, but that all taught you that this can be done, which basically means it resulted in you focusing on that part of the employee base to serve your client and manage the requirements and all those things. So I think if you keep customer experience as a part and employee experience as a part, and try to adopt all your process to meet all kinds of requirement, I think you will not make so much of mistake, and you will be kind of ready for it. So the two difference which created was, I mean, if you want to exactly pick two topics which were for us the challenging stuff, is how do you serve the customer in a far more better way when you're working remote? First challenge. The second challenge was, which Dhananjay put it, I think the company always look at security from only the large systems and the access to it. But it becomes very, very different when all of them are logging from home. And what about that security access because you need to also look at that angle of security and peace in mind when you're working from home and secure this piece and all those things. So I think if you want to summarize it, I mean, I always tell, if you keep customer experience and employee experience on the middle, and then if you can find that whether you work from home or you not work from home, and if you're able to handle and make sure that this is right, I think most of the things you will get it right.
So one final question before we wrap up this session. So I'll reach out to each one of you. Please tell us in a couple of sentences, how do you plan to fuel innovation going forward? Because that's going to be really critical in deciding how fast you bounce back to the growth path. Starting with you, Ms. Juliana. How do you plan to fuel innovation in your enterprise?
I think, so currently the way that we look at this innovation, we really have to reimagine the role of technology. So we have to establish the role of technology as a business and innovation partner, and how do we actually deliver excellent user experience? Because innovation as it is only a form factor, but how can we actually really change what the consumer is actually experiencing? And really to think about how do we actually, as CIOs or even as the tech arm of our organization, future-proof the organization, right? How do we implement a flexible architecture that is supported by modular platforms, so that with modular platforms, it actually fuels or give the pathway for innovation to happen, because it doesn't need to be a full-on architecture, but it can be a modular and a plug-and-play mode as well. Also to enable data ubiquity. So with data ubiquity, then actually there could be more analytics that is showing of what the customer experience is. The teams are able to monitor what is the behavior, and also enable them to understand what change is required. Lastly, really to protect the system through cybersecurity, advanced cybersecurity, because with this move of digital happening so fast, and we have seen the 5 years of digital transformation compressed into the last couple of weeks, we really need advanced cybersecurity to ensure that whatever that we are pushing to the market, to our public, to also our customer, is actually very proof and actually very well thought of for them as well.
Sure, definitely. Like you said, COVID has been the biggest catalyst for digital transformation.
Definitely, yes.
Mr. Bakhtiar, how are you going to fuel innovation in your enterprise?
Okay, IT as a business, we always line up with the business plan in our organization. So as for IT in MEFCOM, we already planned out 3 years blueprint and 5 years blueprint. And this IT blueprint is aligned with the Commission's aspiration to become the center of excellence for aviation industry in Malaysia. And in order to do that, how I need to think to plan out how IT can add value. So how to make the delivery so that whatever the aspiration of the business, then I can deliver it in the best performance, the best possible and secure, and also the consumer experience is the best, so that I will achieve the whatever the aspiration of the organization.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
Mr. Ganesh, your thoughts here, sir.
I think you need to be really clear on the purpose of it. The purpose has to be aligned with the strategy of the institution. In our case, it's to improve customer experience. It is to improve our own kind of employees' experience. So it has got a defined purpose. Then the second thing is to actually continue to invest in an ecosystem. Ecosystem is both internal and external. Internal is you have to actually encourage an entrepreneurial mindset. You have to sponsor them. You have to make sure they are backed right the way through, and you should not have any fear of failure. So out of 10 things, only 1 or 2 might succeed. So it's okay to fail. Philosophy has to be engendered, and you have to create the infrastructure to do that. Externally, you have to bring in partners, partners including players like NASCOM, which we do. We have a relationship with them in India. They have a startup community. Also partners like the tech companies like Google and Microsoft and Amazon. They have a big role to play in this. So creating an ecosystem of partnerships, both within and outside the organization, is fundamental, and you have to have that as in your agenda. It's not something on the side. It's kind of core to your mission. It is part of what you do. It is 20 years ago it was probably seen as as kind of an optional task. Not anymore. I think it's now core to what we do.
Sure. Mr. Khandelwal, quickly, how do you upend the Pareto's principle, which is, you spend 80% of your time managing the infrastructure and are left with only 20% to fuel innovation? How do you reverse that?
I actually don't believe in that because I firmly believe that these are the same people who should create innovation, which what I mean with that stuff is I think you need to focus a lot on the culture aspect, that there are people who are going to work on day-to-day on the job, but these are the best people who understand the customer requirement. These are the best people who understand the requirement which they work on. And if you can create a culture where and give them the environment where they can come up with the ideas, get the like-minded people to work together, and start creating something which can ultimately go into the product. I think that is the best way to fuel it, because I firmly believe that, a lot of the innovations in the large companies, if you feel that it comes from the top, I think it is very limited. Ultimately, you want thousands and thousands of the entrepreneurs coming in, and who acts like entrepreneur, who thinks like entrepreneur. If I'm working with a client, I have this gap, let me work with few people and start creating those stuff. I think that is an important aspect that needs to be built in as a part of the culture, and that would be the focus.
Sure. Mr. Gopi.
Yeah, I believe slightly different on that, because the reason is innovation, it's required based on the requirements. Innovation will not come automatically. Even you look at the top richest country in the world, 3 top highest money currency value country. Last 25 years, not even a single literature or anything is released. There is nothing technically, because they are extremely comfortable. So uncomfortability will make you innovations. That is the logic actually. If you look at anything like a pandemic, right now it's make you uncomfortable. That's why people are doing, okay, I will enable this and I will do that, I will do this. All these things happening because of uncomfortability. If it is a comfort thing, people won't move. If I'm very much comfortable, I will not do much things. So that's why it's important to be uncomfortable. That is very, very important. That's why you look at any leadership team where they will always come with the new things. Do this, do that. So that's why the change is always required in that direction. So that's what I believe. Second is organization, they are not going to protect the jobs anymore going forward. That is very transparent. Organization may protect the people, not the jobs. They cannot say that, okay, this guy always doing this job for last 25 years or 15 years. It's not going to be protected anymore. One simple automation will change your time controller or heat generator or temperature management, or one simple automation IoT can change your entire lifestyle of the job. So the job will go away. That's for sure. So we are not here to protect the jobs. We are here to protect the people. So it is important to reskill, re-engineer, rethink, like Juliana rightly said, the reimagination. That's a very right word, what she said. So overall things, when you look at it, it is important to reskill and learn and unlearn, which is, Balasubramaniam sir made it very clear that is the right approach also. So we have to make it uncomfortable. We will win. It's exactly like the World War II, when Germans have the comfortable flights and they can have everything automations, but the Russian doesn't have a single seats also. It's just a steel plate, and they win the war. The only reason is you want to come back quickly, win the war and come back. So uncomfortability always make you successful. So let's be uncomfortable right now. It's okay, but let's have a more innovation. That's what my point.
Sure. Point well taken there, sir. Moving on to you, Dhananjay, final comments from you. What should enterprise technology leaders do to put the spotlight back on innovation?
So very well said, Gopi. I really enjoyed that last bit of being extremely uncomfortable. As a technology vendor, if we don't innovate, we'll perish. And the three things, with our ears to the ground, the three things that we are hearing from our customers today is cloud, security, automation. And everything that we are building is revolving around these three mantras of our clients.
Great. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all we have time for. We hope the insights shared by our esteemed panelists will help you in fueling innovation in your respective enterprises also. I would like to thank all our panelists. I would also like to thank all our viewers. Keep watching ETCIO Spectrum. Thank you. Thank you so much, speakers, for sharing your valuable thoughts with us. I'm sure Indian and global perspective from our panelists will help technology leaders in getting their strategies for pulling back growth right.